Hello, welcome General Music Virtual PLC friends, kindergarten through eighth grade. This is webinar number 5. Can you believe it? My name is Mark Legier, and I'll be hosting this webinar and the rest of the webinars as we continue in our learning in this music PLC. This session, this webinar is entitled Data and Differentiation for the Music Classroom. Specifically in session 1, we're going to talk about documenting the collected data. Remember, we talked about assessment uses in our last webinars, and in this one, we're going to talk about documenting that collected data, how to use that data for instruction or to drive instruction. That's session number 2. And in session number 3, we'll talk about using that data to create learning centers in our classroom. So let's get into it. The learning target for this session is learn strategies and methods for documenting student data in the music classroom. We're going to learn how to take that data that we got from all those assessments and how to document it consistently. Generally speaking, there are 3 types of data that we can collect as teachers. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's the types that we're going to talk about in this PLC. The first one is achievement data. That's the one that we collect the most, whether it's achievement data from a performance skill or a content knowledge demonstration or achievement level on a quiz or a written project. We collect lots of achievement data and organizing it and document it in a fashion that's good for us, that allows us to access it easily and share with administrators how we have documented student growth over time is super important. Also in our instruction, we use personal preference data that we collect from students. And that means that students share with us maybe their favorite books that they read, their favorite types of music that they listen to, their favorite hobbies or sports. Share with us preferences that they have about ways of learning in a group, how they like to demonstrate by themselves. Do they have skills to create videos where that's a favorite activity or a hobby that they have? And in this case, we would use that personal preference data to kind of help develop our content as we move along the course. And finally, we use experience data. How did you enjoy that experience in this assignment? Using these methods I gave to you, what was your experience like? And students are allowed to give us their opinions, their ideas, and help us understand what makes those projects more successful for more students and what makes those projects most engaging for those students. So let's look at documenting some formal or informal data, depending on how you want to look at it in your personal classroom. I wanted to start super easy with a way that I think most of us probably use, but some of us may overlook just because it's so simple. When we are documenting data that we take in for student performance, whether students are playing an instrument, whether they are singing for us, whether they are performing a specific rhythm, or whether you're asking them questions about content knowledge regarding rhythm, melody, or instruments. You simply use a check plus, a check, a minus, or an R. And obviously, this follows a mental rubric that's probably ingrained in us. Check plus being it exceeds, check being meets, the minus being needs to improve here, doesn't quite meet the standard, and then the R being needs to remediate or to actually reteach the lesson or the skill to that particular student. So when you're documenting this type of data, for example, maybe you're having students perform a particular rhythm that now includes maybe sixteenths or triplets, or maybe you're allowing room for yourself and your students to demonstrate steady beat in a first grade classroom. Regardless of the case, you want to use a spreadsheet or a roster that has some kind of spreadsheet attached to it. You can create those in Excel, usually whatever roster platform or LMS or that you are using. You can usually download spreadsheets of your rosters and upload them easily into Excel spreadsheet. So use a spreadsheet because this is going to allow you to keep up with what you have assessed and the time, the date that you've assessed it, as well as the actual performance level of each student. This should cover one and or more standards. Remember, as music teachers, we often cover more than one standard at a time. So make sure that you document what standards that you're covering. In addition to, I tested on 16th note rhythms. Where is that? What standard is that specifically? So that you can make sure that you're aligning your content and your assessments with those specific standards. This can be formal or informal data. If you're truly interested in or need to show growth, want to show growth, we all should show student growth, then I would allow this to be formal data. I may take it in an informal situation, but it's going to be formative or formal data that's going to allow me to guide my instruction moving forward. How well did my students perform 16th notes without any assistance from anyone else? And when I have that aligned, the next time that I move forward, I can help those students that need instruction, and I can allow those that perform well to move on to other tasks. We're going to talk more about that later. One of the most important things to remember when you are documenting data, whether you consider it to be formal or informal, is make it simple and consistent. Lots of people, instead of using checks and minuses, they use green, red, and yellow. Some teachers even highlight. So you want to make sure that it's simple, something you can use, and consistent, but make sure that you have a plan to document your data. Now, a little bit about documenting summative data. And before we talk about that in detail, let's first, we want to make sure we're using a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is just going to make it easier for us to follow in regards to, I gave a pre-test on this week, and then we followed up with these formative check for understandings along the way, and this was our summative that aligned to our pre-test, and that really allows us to see more specifically. If you use a formal spreadsheet that's digital, most of those applications will easily create graphs for you where you can show the level of growth for a great classroom, for a grade level, and certainly for individual students. So make sure that you're using a spreadsheet to document your data so that it's easy for you and those around you to see and interpret. You want to use your rubric for to score your skill-based performances. So whenever your students are performing Mary Had a Little Lamb or singing whatever song that it is for you, or in the upper grades, if they're performing a scale for you, or whether they're creating a video about a specific classical composer, use a rubric and then use that total rubric score and move that into your Excel spreadsheet. Keep the rubric itself. Remember, you want to provide a rubric for each student that has the different exemplars checked that they met for that performance, and then you can keep that overall rubric score or individual rubric parts of the rubric, however you want to keep it in your spreadsheet, will certainly help you keep track of your performance-based projects. When you are using written or technology-based assessments that are more cognitive, less performance skill-based, then make sure that at the elementary level, you're using a 4, 3, 2, or 1. If you're at the middle school level, if you're using a platform to assist you or grading things on a 100-point scale, that works great for you. But remember, as an elementary school teacher, sometimes when we're giving maybe a technology-based assessment or with technology, it may be scoring on a 100-point scale. Make sure that you are correlating that to students' achievement score on the rubric that they use, which is the 1 to 4 rubric. So be sure to document that and communicate that clearly. And finally, using a question analysis will help you to focus your instruction moving forward out of that unit or as you remediate students for that unit. So when we document our data, let's say that we gave a performance assessment on a certain rhythm and our students achieved that rhythm, whether it was at the middle school level, whether you're tested on 6/8 rhythms, whatever it is based on your different grade level. Let's say that you have tested that and you finished it and you have a score for each student so that you know how your students performed. Well, when you do the same with a cognitive test or where they're answering questions, when and the questions are right or wrong, it's a little bit different. You can get an overall score, average score, mean score for your class, so you can see how the students did. And you can have an individual score for your student where you know that they're a 4, a 3, 2, 1, or a 90 and above, or an 85, or where they fall. But what did they really demonstrate? This is where the question analysis helps you to focus your future instruction. Now, this is an example. This is why I love technology-based assessments where they grade them for you, is because they provide this question analysis that when you have to do it by hand can be very time consuming, especially if you teach all grade levels in your school. So this makes it a little bit easier. I think I did a good job of getting rid of students' names, but you can see here it has each question listed, and over to the right hand side you can see how many students got that, if they got it correct, if they got it wrong. This question, 4 students got it correct, 2 got it wrong, and 1 of the students didn't answer on that one. I think that. And then can easily go through and see. I kind of deleted this part, but then it has each student's name at the top, and then as I go down, I can see green is the students got it right, red is wrong. So then if I look horizontally across, I can see very easily this question, and notice this is the question, and the images don't show on this part. But I know what question it is. It's the half note question. But when I go through, I look and I can see that a lot of students did not get that question right. And I'm thinking, no, that wasn't the half note question. That was the single 16th note question. This is actually a pre-test for 5th grade students that I give again at the end of the school year, so you can see that the scores aren't very high, but I'm able to see really easily what my 5th graders have already learned, and it will help me guide instruction in the future. So this is a question analysis, and it's super beneficial. Now, obviously, not all of your assessments are going to have 30 questions. Most of them might have 5 or 10 questions, so it's going to be easier to analyze that data and guide your instruction. So at the end of this session, let's talk about a few tips for helping you document your data and keep it simple and consistent, and really be able to show student growth at the end of the year to your coordinator or your evaluator or your administrator, and more importantly to your students and to your parents, allowing them to see growth, how much they've learned and how much they've progressed in the year is super important. Remember, because we teach so many students, so many classes, we can't assess everything. Just remember that you can informally assess a lot of things right there on the spot and give some feedback, but documenting everything that you assess, whether it be informal and sometimes formal, can be a huge task. So decide what you assess before you get to assessing. Make sure that you already have decided. And for me personally, I in my classroom, I try to hit the major components and give some preliminary, formative, and summative data on beat, on rhythm, on melody, instrument families as well. So those are the ones that I focus on. And then I pull the standards and align that as I move along. You want to make sure that you decide, what am I going to assess and show student growth for the whole year. That aligns with planning ahead. How will you show student growth when you document your data? Is it just going to be showing growth individually, or are you going to be able to create a spreadsheet or a diagram to help you demonstrate that growth? Strive for a consistent documentation and data review. And one last tip is learn to grow from our colleagues. Ask our colleagues the questions. How do you document data and how do you show growth? And as you begin to ask those questions, you're going to find a lot of common elements that are going to inspire you to continue and to get more organized with collecting your data. And you'll also find some new and innovative ways of collecting data that you might be able to implement in your classroom. In our next session, we're going to take your wonderfully collected data that is neat and organized, and we're going to use it to drive instruction for future units and lessons. I'll see you there.